All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for those of you who are joining us live, and thank you so much for everybody watching the recordings later, whether on YouTube or Facebook or wherever. We are grateful for all of you who are liking, subscribing, and sharing. You're really helping us out, and we appreciate the help. This is My Empowered Political Life for Thursday, April 10th, 2025. And today we have an interesting topic, the possible deportation of U.S. citizens to that horrible prison in El Salvador. Let's see where things are going here. Quick background. I think you guys are familiar with some of the background. We have covered a lot of this on this channel before. So a few weeks ago, remember, several hundred alleged Venezuelan gang members were sent to Socote in El Salvador. It was described as a federal judge recently as the most brutal prison in the Western Hemisphere. And from court records, we already know that many of these people were here legally and should not have been deported. And we know that many were not gang members. We know that some were indeed innocent, or at least have no accusations of any crimes against them whatsoever. And we also know from the court records that none of them received due process. There was no notice of the allegations against them. There was no opportunity to challenge those allegations. There was not even basic due process. Federal judges have ordered that some of these people be returned to the United States. The government has refused even to try and have people returned. Indeed, the government, as we have seen we quoted extensively from the government's briefing in some of our previous videos, the government is arguing in court that once someone is in El Salvador, nothing can be done. The government says nothing can be done, even if the person was sent there by mistake, even if they were here legally, and even if they were accused of no crimes. So what's happening now? The president of El Salvador has said he's happy to jail U.S. citizens in Socote. He suggested that. And President Trump has now openly suggested that U.S. citizens be deported. And our press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has confirmed that the administration is talking about this and thinking about this. So here is President Trump.
20-time wise guys that push people into subways and that hit people over the back of the head and that purposely run people over in cars. If he would take them, I'd be honored to give them. I don't know what the law says on that, but I can't imagine the law would say anything different. If they can house these horrible criminals for a lot less money than it costs us, I'm all for it. But I'd only do according to the law. But I have suggested that, why should it stop just at people that cross the border illegally? We have some horrible criminals, American grown and born.
So that's the president, and here is our press secretary confirming that they are speaking about this now.
For American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly, and these are violent, repeat offenders in American streets. The president has said if it's legal, right? If there is a legal pathway to do that, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly as in the effort of transparency.
Now, if you're not familiar with Socote, we've discussed a little bit. We've mentioned that a federal judge described it as the most brutal prison in the Western Hemisphere. We've mentioned that there's been a lot of reporting on the conditions. Let's take a look at some of that reporting so you can see where they are suggesting that we send United States citizens.
Stepping through these doors, I don't fully grasp what we're about to walk into. Suddenly, you're hit with the intense gaze of dozens locking onto you. These men described as the worst of the worst, tattooed with reminders of El Salvador's dark past. It's tense and uncomfortable, but here, officials say comfort isn't meant to exist.
There's no mattresses, there's no sheets. You've got a toilet over here for them to go to the bathroom. You've got this basin here that they use to bathe themselves. And then you can see there's a barrel of water that they can drink from.
So they literally sleep on bunks that are made of cold steel. No mattresses, no sheets. You can see there are many dozens stuffed into one room with a tiny basin of water that they share. You can imagine how sanitary that must be. One toilet they share. These are men who have lost all hope. You see some of them look dead in the eyes, and you can also see how they are sort of brought out to parade in front of the cameras as though El Salvador is showing them off. These are the conditions, and this prison is notorious for the guards being sadistic and torturing people, possibly liquidating people with no due process whatsoever. Here is what it was like for the people. These are the migrants who were deported from the United States a few weeks ago. As we said, we know from court records now that some of these people are perfectly innocent and some of them were in the United States legally, and this is how they've been treated. So that's what's happening. Now, let's be clear about the state of the law. U.S. citizens cannot be deported. Period. That's the law. Now, a naturalized citizen can have their citizenship revoked upon a finding of fraud, and there has to be a court proceeding to do that. And only then can they be deported. But while they are a citizen, they cannot be deported. Natural born citizens cannot be deported ever. Period. There is no dispute that this is the state of the law. I don't think you'll find any lawyer who will tell you anything different. This is the state of the law. And all deportations require due process, whether you are a citizen, non-citizen, here legally, illegally, all deportations require due process. In fact, the Supreme Court just a few days ago unanimously reaffirmed that this is the case. All 9 justices said deportations require due process, and that means a notice of the deportation proceedings and an opportunity to challenge those proceedings in court. This is true whether the person here is legally, illegally, whatever. All deportations require due process. That is the law. And a Washington Post investigation has found that at least, oh, I forgot to write 7 U.S. citizens have been detained recently. As Trump cracks down on immigration, U.S. citizens are among those snared. Recent reports of at least 7 cases have alarmed advocates and scholars who say they reveal the dangers of a system accelerating with few safeguards. This from the Washington Post just a couple days ago. And I'm going to give this part where they humanize it because I want to make sure that we understand we are not talking about statistics. We are not talking about eggs that are broken when you make an omelet. You will hear this from some administration defenders. Well, to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. We're not talking about eggs. We're talking about human beings. So we're going to humanize it. For one man, it happened when he stepped out of a Chicago pizza shop after an afternoon of job hunting. For a 10-year-old girl and her siblings, it began at a Border Patrol checkpoint in South Texas as their family rushed to the hospital. Now, it turns out that 10-year-old girl has a brain tumor, and they were rushing there for emergency surgery when ICE detained her and her family. For a man in Virginia, it started with immigration agents surrounding his truck, guns in hand. All those people are U.S. citizens who were detained, deported, or otherwise swept up in immigration enforcement actions under the Trump administration's intensifying crackdown. And apparently in these cases, they even showed ICE proof of citizenship, and they were trucked off anyway, including a 10-year-old girl who was being rushed in for emergency brain surgery. This is what's happening. Now, to be clear, U.S. citizens have occasionally gotten swept up in immigration crackdowns over the last few decades. It does happen once in a while. The difference now is these people are showing proof of citizenship to the agents, and they are being taken off anyway. Smash that like button, subscribe, share. Those are the easy things you can do to help us out. If you agree with what we're doing, if you believe in what we're doing, if you like that I am reading all this news as part of my job and my business, and that I'm able to summarize it for you so that you don't have to read it, then please, do these things. Help us get the word out. We are grateful for all of you, those of you who have been helping us. Thank you so much. All right, doors and corners. This is our segment where, like a detective entering a dangerous room, we're going to look around doors and corners.
I kept telling him, I said, there's doors and corners, kid.
If you don't come in slow, that room's going to eat you alive. So we're going to go slowly through all this every day, every morning, until we all wake up and see what's happening and start to understand the implications and take action to do something. So let's be clear. Again, United States citizens cannot be deported, period. That is the law. That's the law. There is no dispute. That is the law. And so the objections I'm hearing to my concerns about this are, but Trump says he'll only do it if it's legal. It's not legal. We know it's not legal, and the administration knows it's not legal. They cannot possibly believe it is legal because this is one of the most clear things in all of immigration law. U.S. citizens cannot be deported. They know it's not legal. We already know the administration's idea of what's legal because they've said this in the court papers. Their idea of what's legal is to send people to a foreign torture dungeon so fast that by the time your family files a lawsuit, you're already gone. Then the Department of Justice will argue it's too late to bring you back. We've already seen them argue in court this very thing. That's how we know that they think this is fine, because they are arguing this in court under oath as we speak. That's their idea of what's legal. We'll just send you to the torture dungeon, and then we'll go to court and say, sorry, our mistake can't be fixed. But Trump says he'll only do it to the worst, most violent criminals. Well, they already said they were deporting the worst, most violent Venezuelan gang members, but we also know from court records that that's not true either. They say one thing in public, and we learn something else in court where you have to tell the truth. We also know from the court records they have made no factual determination before sending people off. There's been no due process. So they can snatch you up, and you will not get a chance to go to court to prove you're a citizen, to have a court order you to stay. They just send you away and you disappear. So if there's no factual record, and if the administration has already been caught lying, how do we know they are only sending the worst criminals? The answer is we don't. And in fact, we know from the court records that many of the people are not criminals whatsoever. Many of them were here legally. But Trump doesn't mean it. Then he shouldn't say it. Over the last few years, we keep hearing things like he's joking, or he doesn't really mean it, or he's all bluster. But now we are actually seeing him carry out the things he threatened to do. All the things people said he didn't mean, he's now doing. So maybe we should start taking the president at his word when he says this stuff. And as we've seen, at least 7 citizens who provided proof of citizenship, innocent people, have been swept up in ICE detention as we speak. Ask yourself why they're there. And then, of course, but this wouldn't happen to me. It happens to those people, not me. That's exactly what we all need to stop thinking. Ask those 7 US citizens who have been swept up after showing their papers. Did they think it would happen to them? Did the family of a 10-year-old girl rushing to the hospital for emergency surgery, did they think it would happen to them? Did the man in the pizza shop think it would happen to them? None of them thought it would happen to them, but it has. And it is happening to regular innocent folks right now. If there's no due process for other people, there's no due process for you. Even the worst, most violent, awful criminals have a constitutional right to due process. If one person doesn't have due process, then nobody has due process. It can happen to anyone. If one US citizen can be sent to a gulag in El Salvador, then you can be sent there too. We have to stop thinking this won't happen here, this won't happen to me. I will see you all tomorrow.